Here will be the structure of the folders and subfolders where you're going to introduce information. And here basically is another window for introduction the data for different menus will appear in this area. And this screen is the most interesting for me. Is you have to tell to the computer code which one is the hydrological scheme you want to calculate. For instance, imagine that in a very simple case, you have this basin, and you want to obtain the runoff response of the basin outlet. Okay? There are several options. You can use, and you try to approach this as a single basin. Maybe it's simply simple. But remember we made a comment last weeks, that depending on the characteristics of the basin, it would be interesting to split into much smaller units, trying that those units will as much homogeneous as possible concerning land uses, concerning the slopes, concerning many of the comments. But maybe here, when you have these two tributaries that they combine here and go downstream, maybe one option could be to consider the upper part and the lower part of the basin. And even in this case, when you have two channels in this section, maybe another option could be to split the upper basin into two other subbasins. Then this will be the basin A, this will be the basin B, and the basin C. On the outlet will be this one, and this is the point that will be relevant because we'll be here the reduction of the runoff of the two upper subbasins will be combined. Let's call this the W1. So, the first thing, we must create some hydrological scheme to tell to the and then be able to transfer to tell to the computer which one is the process we want to calculate. To create a hydrological scheme, we must always start from the upstream part and move to the downstream part. This is exactly the flow that follows the water. The water is rainfall to runoff is produced here, then moves downstream and combines with the rest of the runoff produced here. So I can say that I want to calculate the runoff where at the outflow of the basin A by some procedure, and at the same time I'm going to calculate the runoff produced at the sub-basin B. And the runoff response of the subbasin A and the runoff response of the subbasin B will be calculated at the same point. So, two hydrographs that have been calculated at the same point can perfectly be combined. So, I can combine the runoff response of this and this. What I have first the runoff of this, I have then the runoff of B, and here I can combine both to have the combination of these two discharge hydrographs. And this hydrograph here calculated, in which point is in the point W. This is just on scheme. Okay? But remember we want to get the flow hydrograph at the basin of the yes. Una pregunta. Okay, so, but this hydrograph, I want to, what is the next physical process? This hydrograph travels along the river ridge. And which is this process? Is the flow routing process we have introduced in the last days. So, this must be, I for instance would like to prepare a hydrological scheme for the flood routing process. I assume two lines, and just for connections, I just put one single line. And then here, this will be at the point O. And what I get? The propagated discharge hydrograph here, some delay and all the things associated with the flood routing process. Is this the final result I want to get? No, because we have calculated the runoff production at the point at basins A and B and propagated flood routing, applied the flood routing process to the downstream end, but still we have to consider the runoff production of the sub-basin C. And the runoff production of the sub-basin C, where has it been calculated? It has been calculated at the point O. So at the same point where the flood routing process provides this discharge hydrograph. So I can perfectly combine both. And this is exactly the hydrological scheme I want to calculate. And this is the hydrological scheme I should be able to transmit to the computer code. Now we're going to see how to do it in a very simple way. So one of the advantages of the HMS, maybe some of you are familiar with another computer code of the same family, that maybe is the HEC HMS, the river analysis system. And it's a very similar idea. When you start up an analysis and calculation, computer considers to create what we call a project. What is a project? Very simple. Inside of how is the information is organized, everything will be associated with one name and one folder. In such a way that when you're creating this project, this example, this test case, this case for analysis, I repeat, all the information concerning the basis, concerning the rainfall, the land uses, and so on, everything will be in the same folder. In such a way that when you are, if you're not finishing your work and you have to move out, you can copy this folder in one pen drive and go move to another different computer at any different place where HMS in this case is installed. You copy again this folder in the new computer, and you can open this case with no limits, with no restrictions. So you don't need to copy complex information. No, everything is inside the same file, and this is quite simple. So to start any analysis, you can follow the same steps I'm going to do. You check File and say a new project must be opened. You say here the folder, create a new project. This is the idea, the concept, how computer calls a new test case. What name? It doesn't matter, you don't provide anyone. And it tells you where will be located this folder. This is the location, this is the roots and connection and folders and subfolders where it's going to be. Interesting that the 4-unit system by default, new versions now when you install it appear in metric units, but in former ones, in all the ones, was very funny because if you were not aware of this problem, by default, I remember that versions 3.4, 3.5, it was installed considered by default imperial units, so inches, miles, square miles. But I imagine that you have metric units too, as me, you create. And you see immediately appears here one folder, and every information concerning the basin, the rainfall, land uses, and so on, will be included in subfolders, all of them inside this one here. Okay? Good. There is nothing here, so that's it. As I told you here, some message from the computer. The project was created in October 23 at 9:19 minutes 32 seconds. So it's extremely interesting information, as you can imagine. Good. Any hydrological model inside HMS, it has 3 different components. When you open the menu of components, you see different. As a minimum, you must create a basic model. Basic model is something like this that we have established here in the board. What is the hydrological scheme you want to calculate? Second, you have to provide some meteorological model. What does it mean? You must tell which are the rainfalls that will operate over the basin. And third, you must provide always, as a minimum, a so-called control specification manager. What does it, a control specification file, what does it mean? You must tell the computer at what time instant you want it to start the calculation, at what time instant you want to finish, and maybe the time step you want to use in the analysis. That's it. And there are 3 additional ones to manage time series data manager. For instance, time series data will be related to what? For instance, rain gauges. Rainfall information, design, store, or observed rainfall is a time series, is a time history of time evolution of the rainfall. But maybe HMS has many other possibilities, for instance, to include external discharge hydrographs that will operate in one special format. In our case, the simple one is this. Payload data manager, you have to use in your coursework, because in some cases, there are data that will be associated to 2 values at the same time. For instance, the geometry of one valley where you want to locate one reservoir can tell you that, for instance, for this elevation, the volume associated to this elevation are this volume, these millions of cubic meters. And you can define the geometry, for instance, giving the volume or giving the plane area associated to each one of the elevations. Okay? But the simple case, as I say, as a minimum, we will use always minimum 1 basic model, minimum 1 methodological model, and minimum 1 control specifications. For instance, let's create a new basic model. Again, how many basic models do we have associated to this case? No one. So let's create a new one. And as usual, the computer provides this original name as basic one. You can change it or you can keep it. Let's create. It is. And look here, the structure of the folders associated to the folder case 1. There is one subfolder associated to the basic model. You get a very nice color, a very nice picture here. And when I press here, immediately you see that the window here on the right, it becomes active. Information concerning this basic model, not yet, there is nothing inside here, it's completely blank. What we have to do? We have to tell the computer code which one is my hydrological scheme I want to calculate. How can I do that? Look here in the upper part of these menus. Here we have certain elements that will be the only elements necessary to create any hydrological scheme. And from this setup, I can tell you that we will use 4 or 5. The first one is the so-called subbasing creation tool. So it indicates that to actively create different subbasins at different places. By the way, this is just a scheme, so the distance between elements will be less, have no difference. The second will be the reach creation tool. What does it mean? If you have to indicate any reach of a river, we will use this element. The third will be the reservoir creation tool. Just in case you have to design or you have to include in the hydrological analysis the presence of one reservoir, you will use it. The fourth one is the so-called the junction creation tool. A junction is an auxiliary point. So from the hydrological point of view, it has no meaning, but could help. For instance, here, this would be perfectly seen as a junction element where the runoff associated to the basin A and the runoff associated to the basin B will be combined. Okay. And the other 3 diversion creation tools, this is an option that will allow you to divert part of the runoff from one point to another. That could represent, imagine that in a river reach, you have a pumping station that extracts some amount of water from the river and transfers these volumes to another place. So this is a diversion in English, and extracción, desviación. But in our case, we have no diversions. And the last 2, the source and the sink creation tool, you don't need to use them. So first one, we have to tell a computer that my hydrological scheme is like this. So I have to first activate the subbasing creation tool. You see when it's activated, and you put here, the arrow has been transformed into a cross. And for instance, I have 1, 2 upstream basins. I can select this. I press the left button of the mouse. I say, first one, original name, and then subbasin 1. I can keep it. I can put here again for the second, subbasin 2, and I can let here, for instance, prepare it for the next subbasin 3. Good. Now what we have here, 3 different subbasins in the cloud. But they are not connected, they are not linked, they're not giving you any information. But do I know that the runoff from the subbasin 1 and the subbasin 2 must be combined? So I can create this auxiliary point. I can create one junction and tell the computer that I want in this junction combine both these child hydrographs. You have a better vision this way.
Kind of.
Next time you can bring a pillow. You can activate it. Okay? And let's create, for instance, here in this point, one junction, again, original name of junction 1. And that's it, has been created. But we must tell the computer that I want that this junction should be combined the runoff from both subbasins. How to do that? Again, I have to activate again the arrow. I put myself over the subbasin and now press the right button of the mouse. When you do that, appear one menu. And among the different options of the menu, there is one this connect downstream. What does it mean? The information calculated at the subbasin A will be transferred to where? To some point downstream. And when you do that, again the arrow transforms into a cross. I put here over the log of the junction, I press, and you'll see that immediately appears this link, this line, straight line. What does it mean? The information calculated here will be transferred to the junction to do what? Combination. But I have to do the same with the subbasin 2. I press the right button of the mouse, I activate the connect downstream, I put here, and that's it. Extremely simple. You see, extremely fast. Now I'm going very slowly, but you can imagine when you are familiar with the computer code, you do it in a question of not seconds or maybe milliseconds. Good. We have to create another junction here. I can again create the new junction and to have it prepared here for the moment. But the flow that has been calculated here, we must propagate. We must calculate the flood routing through what? Through a river ridge. So we must create in the basic model one river ridge. And the river ridge is this one here.
Bridge creation tool.
Is it clear? So now we have used the subbasins, the junctions, and the last one now is the river ridge. We activate the river ridge, and we put here somewhere, and we create the ridge number 1. Shit. One problem, depending on the version, you see here, this is just one point. One dot. You have this, or you have a small ridge visible.
The dot.
You have the dot.
Yeah.
The dot was. You must then put the arrow here, press the left button of the key, and keeping pressing the left button of the key, move the arrow, and then the ridge is visible. Did you got it? Is it?
Yes.
Okay. Again, this ridge is in between something, but what is the purpose? I want that the flow calculated at the junction 1 must be propagated through this ridge. What to do? Again, this is the, oh my God. The arrow is over here. I put over junction and I say left button of the mouse, and again I select the connect downstream. Because I want that this flow should be conveyed, should be transported through the river ridge. So once this is activated, I put my cross over the ridge, I press the left button of the mouse, and you see automatically, boom, it moves upstream. And the beginning of the ridge one is exactly the junction number 1. If this is small, don't worry, you can put it here, and you can move here, here, whatever you want. Is it? But now this will be calculated, and you will get the flood routing process of the discharge hydrograph of basin A and basin B at this point. And later on, remember, you want to combine with the runoff of the sub-basin 3. So where you're going to combine flows? You combine flows always in a junction. So I must tell to the basic model, to the flood routing hydrograph, transfer this information to the junction number 2. And connect downstream, and I put the cross over junction 2. I press the left button, and that's it. In this moment, the flood routed, the propagated hydrograph from the point W will arrive to the point O, and ready to what? Ready to combine with any other runoff produced. Which runoff should be combined here? Should be combined the contribution of the sub-basin C. I do the same, connect downstream, I put over there, and that's it. Now, you have done this, you have created your first hydrological model in life. I hope you will be the only one. Is it? Simple. And that's it. Is it okay with our hydrological scheme? Yes, it is. So the most relevant step for me is to create the right hydrological scheme. And don't make confusion that sometimes for typical problems, some people sometimes create a ridge number 1 and the opposite. And the flow goes from the junction 2 to junction 1. It's a typical mistake. Check it. It's great, you will do it. As I told you, this is just a scheme. You can modify. You prefer a completely vertical ridge one, you can do it. If you don't like the name here of the sub-basin 3, you can change to the right, to the side. It's up to you. Okay? Same for junctions. Same for junctions. 1 junction 2. Okay? And that's it. But this hydrological scheme is completely empty. It's just a framework. What we have to do, we must provide the right data for each one of the elements belonging to the hydrological model. For instance, let's start with sub-basin 1. What do we have here? All the relevant information concerning the sub-basin 1. This, okay. And by default, this is, for instance, in my case, I have for default that the loss method suggested to use is the soil conservation survey curve number. And for the transfer method, for the runoff prediction, I assume that by default, in my case, the unihydrograph will be used. But you have here a menu, and here is the list of the different loss procedures that are included in the HMS. Initial and constant is the linear method, the smooth and partlance, and so on. There are different procedures over here, exponential, linear, and so on. I keep, because you're basically familiar with the curve number model, that's it. And concerning the rainfall runoff prediction, there are also different options. Different unit hydrographs, Clark unit mode Clark, and so on. It's neither unit hydrograph. I told you there are different unit hydrographs available in the technical literature, because basically during, yes, in an introductory module, you're familiar with this one and it. And what we have here is information you have to provide. Information with red asterisk. That means that it's compulsory to introduce this information. So if this information is blank or zero, not zero, blank, there is an error, and when you try to run the computer code, some mistake will appear. Area for the sub-basin 1. you have to calculate in your special case which one is the area. Interesting. It tells you which are the units associated to this data. And could be 78.4. A typical problem in HMS, depending how is defined the integral delimiter, if it's a dot or it's a comma. To check it, I put here a comma. If I move to one other menu and I go back, you see that the decimal has disappeared. What does it mean? In my case, in my laptop, the decimal delimiter is a dot. This is extremely important because you can say that for the basin area, 78 or 78.3 is not so much different, right? But imagine, for instance, in case you're using the masking group method and you use it for the heat 0.35, or you consider just 0. So the difference is completely different. So in my case, I put again dot 3, I move to one menu, go back to the same, and I see this information is still here. Some information, you can put some description associated to the basin, that is not necessary, and positions of the latitude and longitude of the location of the basin. Not relevant, okay? Here's some other information. The canopy method, surface method, this is basically for losses, depending, not for, is for a long-term analysis, not for the flood scenarios, so always no one. And this is in case you want to model the potential possible existing some base flow value. What does it mean? If the river has an initial flow before the rain event. There are different options here: bounded recession, linear reservoir, non-linear recession, and so on. Just to simplify the process, we're going to consider that our rivers are completely dry, ephemeral streams, and the runoff is produced just associated to some special rain event. In most cases, the peak flow is so high in comparison with the base flow that it's not prior to that. So we have introduced information concerning the basin. Now we have introduced information concerning the losses. And we have assumed that the loss procedure will be the Cuban number. So here is indicated the initial abstraction, the Cuban number, and the impervious percentage. Cuban number, you must take your decision depending on the type of soil and the type of land use. And for instance, could be 78. And here you have the initial abstraction. Remember that we told you that in some way, if you have some information from previous studies indicating which one is the initial abstraction of the basin, you can introduce here the data. And you know that the initial abstraction in the terrain is 19.3 millimeters, for instance, you can introduce this information here. But if you have no idea, remember that the option, the procedure, suggests you to consider 20% of the maximum retention capacity. Okay? You can do, or you can calculate this value and introduce here, or much better, left in blank, and the computer will calculate the initial abstraction as this 20% of the maximum retention capacity. It's much clever. Okay? And as another parameter, you can introduce here the percentage of impervious area. Could be 0, or could be 7, or could be 3, or could be 4.1, or 4.3. Okay? You must analyze what are the characteristics of your basin. You can introduce this information, and that's it. So the losses are introduced. Concerning the transfer process. Transfer process is, remember, the Soil Conservation Service synthetic unit hydrology. And remember what is the information associated. Check. It was just the lag time. And remember, the lag time is around what? Some percentage of the time of concentration. If you check, you look at the help online, because this was created by the guys of the Soil Conservation Service and the guys of the United States Army Corps of Engineers that they are in touch. They will tell you that the lag time is 60% of the time of concentration. But remember that the concept of time of concentration is not the same as the concept we have. So you calculate the time of concentration from this concept, this idea of the time needed for a drop that falls in the farthest point from the basin outlet. It takes time to arrive to the basin outlet. You must introduce here what? 0.35 multiplied by time of
Time.
concentration. And here, suggest introduce it in minutes. I don't know, just to give some value. Okay? So you can introduce information for basics 2 and basic 3, do it quickly. Okay. Are you finished? Yeah.
Not yet.
That's it. You make some mistakes when you try to run the example letters. Some computer will tell you that there's base scenario is missing in that or something like that. Okay? Okay, so it just provides some values to obtain some data here. So we have introduced all the information concerning different subbases. Good. Here is for the loss, here for the transport. At the junctions there is no information, just a description. And interesting, when you press here the junction will tell you that computer will transfer to the downstream, which element downstream will transfer the flow to the element which one. Is one way to check that your hydrological scheme introduced in the computer is correct. Because imagine that here appears that from junction 1, here it does not appear which one, but junction 2. This is wrong. Okay? And when you press again which one, in my case for the 4, the routing method suggests that is the masking method, but inside computer, inside HMS, there are different options: kinematic wave, lag time, modifier pulse, masking punch, status table. Because in this module you have been introduced simply to the masking method, I suggest you to keep it. And we must introduce the parameters associated to the masking method for this river reach. Which ones? Remember, the key of the masking loop, the key of the masking loop, and the number of sub-reaches. Remember, we introduced what were the number of sub-reaches. And I don't know, masking loop would be 2, and the masking loop 3 would be, I don't know, maybe 0.28. This is extremely relevant, for instance, here, because if you instead to use dot, I use a comma. If I move for one menu and I go back, the elements be next to the comma will have disappeared. In this case, it's correct. Okay, so I keep the number of sub-reaches as 1, just in order to see if there is some effect I can correct later. So, ladies and gentlemen, the basic model is finished. I strongly suggest that from time to time, you press here just to store the information. Because with the laptop it's not so necessary, but if you work in any desktop computer and suddenly the night is over, it's fantastic. After different hours working, you see here the structure of all the elements related to the basin model. So basin 1, so basin reach 1, and so basin 3, and so on and so on. So the first of the component has been introduced. What do we do next? We'll have to introduce the second element, that would be the meteorological model. Meteorological model is related to the rainfall we want to be actuating over each one of the subbasins. But before to tell the basins, which is the rainfall associated to, we have to introduce the rainfall data. And the rainfall data is always introduced with the time series data manager. Imagine that in this case we're going to simplify and we're going to assume that one single rain event or one single design storm will be operated all over the basin. So basins A, B, and C. But if you have rainfall information for different subbasins, you can introduce as many rain gauges as basins or information you have. But as I say, let's create the time series data. Here there are different types of time series: discharge gauge, stage gauge, temperature gauge, but in our case we want to introduce a precipitation gauge. There is no time series before, so we create a new one. Again, the original name of gauge 1, and that's been created. That you see, another folder here appear. Okay, you see, precipitation gauge, no information here. And when you press here, by default, you can introduce some description. What is the data source? It's manual entry. Well, that means that you're going to type all the information concerning the rain gauge. On the time interval, by default suggests you to use 15 minutes time step, but you can change it. The only problem is that HMS does not allow you to use any time step. It suggests you, for instance, the smallest one could be 1 minute, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes, but you cannot introduce a rain gauge with the 8 minutes time step. It's not so critical. But will allow you time steps of 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and so on. Because I'm going to do something small, I'm going to use a 10 minutes time step, okay? And later on, we go to the sub-menu here, and what you have? Information here. For instance, the gauge number 1, by default, and this is my case definition, suggests a 24 hours initial duration for the rainfall. Do you have a design storm, or you have an observed rain event of 24 durations? Not necessarily. Imagine that in my case it's just a 1 hour rain event. I must tell to the computer that the rainfall begins at some time instant and finish 1 hour later. Here, what is the start date? When you're dealing with design storm, it doesn't matter, because the design storm, you never know when it will come. But in case you're reproducing what happened some specific day, and you want that in the final results and the data will appear the date of that specific day, you can introduce here, no, this is the rainfall that was observed in November 12, 2013. You can do it. But because it's in my case, in this moment, it will be design storm, for instance. I'm going to assume 1 hour maximum duration. So starting at midnight, 0 hours, 0 minutes of January 1st, and we finish the same day 1 hour later. Because I have my operating system in Spanish, is here ENN. But if you have in English, you will see January. Like in German, Januar. You have in French, you will see Janvier. Exactly the same. Depending on the language you deal with, you get the one meaning. Okay? And how to introduce the information? Remember, we have here defined 1 hour duration. And before we have defined which time step? 10 minutes. So 60 minutes divided over 10 minutes, we need to introduce 6 values. Let's go to the submenu of table, and how many cells will appear? Exactly 6. Okay? And I'm going to introduce an information for the first 10 minutes. 3, 5.4, 8.2, 18.3, 12.6, and 6. That's it. Okay? These around 50 millimeters in 1 hour. Not bad. Nothing serious, but not bad. If the list is very long and you type it until then to type all the information, Control C and Control V, imagine you have prepared your design store in the Excel. So you can copy from the Excel all the data and you can put here the first one, put the Control V, and all the information will be copied. And to check that there is no mistakes, you can go to the graph and you will see some view of what is the shape of the storm you have introduced the rain gauge in your case. Imagine that you make a mistake and instead to put 18, I put 180. You will observe here that it is a very high value. Is it? Good. That's it. So we have introduced the time series, and we have one gauge introduced. And we're going now, go back, and we have to create a meteorological model. Meteorological model, we must create, there is no meteorological model, we must create this one, create the net one, that's it, and finish. And another subfolder concerning the meteorological model has been created. You see? You activate this, you select, and net one. You see here, one problem. This is appear only in the new versions. And sometimes, I don't know why, and nobody knows why, when you have to introduce the rainfall data, computer tells you, for instance, remember that before we have introduced just 6 values. But there is some internal bugs of the computer. Maybe can create internally and nobody knows why, instead of 6, just 12. But there is no information to introduce the other 6 data. And here, so internally there is some missing data. And by default, when you install, you have here replace missing and appears abort compute. Do you have in your laptops? What do you have? What?
What do you mean, what do you have?
Are you here? You see where am I? Replace missing. What do you have in your laptop?
No, it's not launching on.
What?
The program is not launching on my computer.
I don't understand you. Can you speak louder, please?
The program is not launching on my computer at the moment.
So what are you doing this morning here? Just reading.
No,
So you're not following the case? It's not launching. Why not?
I don't know.
Have you tried to do it yesterday?
Components,
Yeah, I downloaded it yesterday.
Meteorologic
Yesterday
Model
wasn't.
Manager.
Wasn't.
Create a new one.
one.
Zoom. Closer.
So what do you have this menu here?
Meteorologic. Yeah, our compute.
You have our compute.
Yeah.
So change it. Set to and change to set to default.
Okay.
What does it mean? The default value will be 0. So if by its internal bug, some extra values are demanded by computer, when you do that, computer automatically to associate these extra points to 0. That is the right value. Okay? Second, this menu, basins. Basin model includes basins, and you must say yes, because in my basin model general, I got to include in the meteorological model all the different subbasins. And you say yes. Okay, my God. And then when you go to the specifier photograph, you have here the list of the different subbasins. And when you put here which gauge should be assigned, press here, and will appear the whole list of the different gauges that you have introduced. Because in our case, we can introduce just one. You select gauge 1 for the basin 1, select gauge 1 for the basin 2, and select the same gauge for the basin 3. But I repeat, in case you have more than 3, 4, 5, 6 gauges, you can assign at the different subbasins different gauges. Okay? And the meteorological model is finished. Quite simple. And we can proceed to the last of the element. We must create a control specifications file. Create one, new. Let's create, it's finished, and that's it. Again, a control specification folder has appeared, and it's very much simpler. We must tell computer when should we start the analysis. When? When do you think?
The same date we had in the precipitation gauge.
The beginning of the precipitation. So you must put here, in my case, it's 81 mm 2000. At what time? 0 hours.
0 hours.
0 minutes.
0 minutes.
And when should it be finished? Should be finished after the rainfall. Hola.
Es que tenemos examen ahora.
Aquí mismo. A las 10. Should be finished at the same time, but when? After the rainfall plus the time of concentration of the basin. You can calculate in advance, or you can provide some duration. For instance, I tell you 6 hours. And when do you, how much detailed result, what do you collect? For instance, by default suggest 5, 10, 15 minutes, and I would say that I change to 10 minutes. And that's it. And the control specification is finished. Again, I save. And now, we're ready to compute the model. Go to the menu compute, and you say create compute, create a simulation run. Simulation run allows you to combine different basic models, different precipitation rate, different meteorological models, and different control specifications. When I create this one, computer will create a run called run 1. Go to the next step. Which one of the basic models should be included? Because we have just one, I select this one. Next one. Because which one of the meteorological models should be included? Because I have created just one. Imagine you have created different meteorological models for different return periods. For design store of 10 years, design store 100 years, design store 500. You can combine and create different runs for this. You use the same, and for the control specification, exactly the same. Now, that's it. Okay? And now, when this is created, compute, we can go to the simulation run manager. We have one, and the this is not activated, this one here.
Simulation run manager.
Honestly, I have a problem now, but I don't know why it doesn't. Oh yeah, run 1 here.
Run 1.
Sometimes if you have created different runs, select which one you want to run this one. And you see here, this has been activated, this drop of water with explosion. What does it mean? This is what you have to press to calculate. So if you have arrived to this point, press
Close because
and begin to
it
calculate.
failed. No.
What
area.
happens here?
No.
Errors.
No area is set to sub-basic.
Errors were here. No area is set for sub-basin 2. One error in basin model, basin 1. What does it mean? I have to check my information concerning the sub-basin 2. And for instance, I did it here. Because I made a mistake introducing the area, not in the area place, but in the description. I have to change this.
Done. Okay.
This is one of the typical problems that in many cases happens. I check transforms, I check everything.
In the base flow method,
Use
known.
store again, and I try to calculate, and the problem is solved. And if it's okay, you succeed. There is no problem. You will see 100% calculation. Someone have you succeeded? Yeah. No. What is the typical error? What can be? What?
Mine is right.
What is what? I don't hear you.
I don't have any errors.
You don't have, and you're at 100%? Fantastic. That's it. But you have a list of errors that should be solved.
Checking
What
the
else?
salt basins. But in the salt basin? No. In the salt basin? This is
This is one typical problem
choose
sometimes
another
with
one.
HMS. In case you have some problems introducing the rainfall data,
Mhm.
I strongly suggest
No, okay,
to
and
eliminate
the
the precipitation
first one?
gauge
Okay.
and create from new. Okay?
Run again?
Don't worry, it happens.
I have a problem that's missing or invalid values for gauge whatever, but I
No,
put the
lag
values.
is set in salt basin 3.
Check now the values, and again, this is something related to precipitation gauge.
Mhm.
What is suggested is eliminate the precipitation gauge, you have introduce it and
Okay.
create from scratch. And the problem solves.
Perfect.
I told you, it's a computer code that has some small bugs sometimes. Okay?
Perfect, buddy.
And just the last thing before you go to the exam. When you finish and this one is over, you say close. Another interesting thing to check is analyze results. For instance, let's see results obtained at the subbasing 1.
Pure result.
Put the arrow over subbasing 1 and press the right button of the mouse. And you see one menu, what was not activated before, call it view results.
Yeah. Graph, summary table, and time series table.
But it's still not that good.
Graph. Oh,
I don't
That's
know
beautiful.
what happens with my case.
mm. It's quite similar.
When you go to view results, you will see a menu to see the graph, summary table, time series. What does it mean? Check, for instance, graph. If you check this, what do you get? This is the total rainfall and the effective rainfall in blue, and this is the hydrograph obtained at the basin of. Okay? If you check on the ridge, you will see again what you see, upstream and downstream discharge hydrograph. And you see here, remember, because we use just one sub-ridges, we see negative values that should be correct.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to modify this number of sub-ridges. Okay?
Okay.
And I think we have to finish now because the colleague will be here. So, try to repeat at home, and just in case you have some doubts, come to my office and we'll discuss about it. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so, by the way, I will give you in some